the Parent Resource Center and see all the new things that we got there. So if you didn't get to go to the Parent Resource Center, please go over there before you leave today and look at all the new fun things that we have in there that you can take home and work with your children on. Work with your children at home. Today we're just going to do some math strategies because your kids may come home and say, and you're trying to teach them math and they're saying, no mommy, my teacher doesn't do it that way. So we're going to go over the ways that the Common Core teaches us or tells us that we need to be teaching math. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to start with addition. So these are the ways that we still teach math this way. Drawing pictures, circles, counting with our fingers, counting on, thinking of the big number in our head and counting up the small number. Those kind of things, or we have 3, what's 5 more? So we still teach math that way, the traditional way, but we also do another way that we might do it with, especially if we have a story problem, is to help the children think of Joe saw 6 snakes in the grass. 4 of the snakes were green. The rest of the snakes were orange. How many snakes? So we teach them to think of, okay, 6 is my total. I know I have 4. So how many more do I need? And that's really kind of teaching them that addition and subtraction are the reverse operations of each other. So we teach them that way. Think of I have 4, how many more do I need to have 6? So they think of that box as like their missing number. And eventually they start to grasp, but that is really subtraction. 6 minus 4 is 2.
Usted puede enseñar así de una manera tradicional utilizando las manos. O también pueden utilizar los dots. Le hacen los dots. Como por ejemplo, si es 5 más 2, pues hacen 5 circulitos más 2 circulitos más para que ayuden a sumar. Y estos son los problemas. Pueden utilizar el número mayor arriba. Entonces pueden preguntar los 6, por ejemplo, hacen un 4, le ponen un 4, dicen cuánto es 4, más qué número que van a hacer. Y así cuando van utilizando, también van a hacer los circulitos, pero también utilicen a ellos para que ellos van a aprender a sumar. Es más fácil.
Okay, so then we get to the addition with the teen numbers, or they might call those decade numbers because they're 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And this is where we start to teach it a little bit different. Okay, this is where we start to teach them that if I'm adding 10 and 3, then I know I have one group of 10s, I have 3 1s. We teach them to use the 10 plus 1, 10 plus 2, and they start thinking 10 plus 3. So we teach them adding 10s, adding the 10s rods. So that's when it starts to come a little bit differently than we were taught. Or if I have 50 plus 3, then I know I have 50 10s. So I have 10, 5 of these, and then I have 3 of these. So we start teaching them to use those 10 sticks to add their numbers up. And then it gets a little bit when we start to move into numbers that are bigger, when we're adding 2 10s.
Utilizan la gráfica por cada día, lo que hace que le suman lo que más suman adicional. Pueden practicar esto. Que es 50 más 3, que tiene 50 más 3, te da 53. Tienen que utilizar la gráfica.
So then when we start teaching them that we have adding larger numbers, like we have 28 and we have 5, we start teaching them that we have, really we're adding 20, and we're adding 8, and we're adding 5. And then we go back and add 20 plus 13 to give us the answer of 33. So we get them to add their 10s first and then add their 1s. So they're really having to break those numbers apart, and they call that decomposing the number. So your child may come home and say, they taught me to decompose a number, or that may be on their homework sometimes. It may say decompose the number. And so if it says that, that's what it's asking them to do, is it's asking them to break the number down into its parts, into its hundreds, 10s, 1s, into its place value form.
Si usted escucha que los niños en la escuela hablan sobre decomposing numbers, eso significa que van a utilizar 10, y uno por ejemplo aquí hay 28, utilizar 10, 20, los 8 y después utilizar los 5, entonces te da el número final. Que por cada día va a utilizar entonces la línea, lo que significa 10.
And then this might just be another way that they show it. If they're adding 45 and 20, they're adding their 10s first, 40 plus 20, and showing that work. And then they're adding their 5 and their 8, which is 13, and then they add 60 and 13 to find the total. So it's just another way of, like they say, decomposing the number, breaking it down into its parts, its place value form. And for some kids, if they can get adding it this way, and their brain, some of their brains do work this way. I know my brain, I had to teach my brain to work this way. When they get to multiplication and they multiply two digits by 2 digits, it becomes very easy if they can learn to think this way.
Sí,
So,
aprenden a estudiar de esta manera para descomponer los números para sumar.
I
Cuando
still
empiecen el
teach it the
proceso de
traditional way.
multiplicación, puede
Borrow
ser
and
más
carry.
fácil para
I
ellos.
When I go in the third grade
Porque
classroom,
traen
that's what I
primero de
still say when
coger
I'm in
el
there. I said,
sistema
you gotta
de
carry,
dividirlo
you gotta borrow.
por el
I mean, I use that term
porque eso les
regroup,
hace
but
más
they don't
fácil.
use regroup so much anymore. They call it adding your totals, adding your tens and adding your ones. So the Common Core has gotten to be a little, getting us away from our traditional way of thinking.
Is there a time when the students have to show this method and then have to show and do this method in order to get the correct answer, or can they do the
Traditional way,
the
most
traditional
teachers
way?
let them do it the traditional way. The only time they might have to do that is they may ask them to do that on like the GMAS or on their standardized test. Or they could, if they've done it that way, that's another way for them to explain their thinking. Because, you know, now on the test that we have in the spring, they have to write a response. Several questions they have to write. And so this might be a way when they have, this might be something they would have to do when they're doing that written response part. Just on the strictly computation part, no, but maybe in the written response part, yeah.
In the written response part, does it have to be in sentence format, or can it be?
They can, a lot of times it says to show a picture and draw, but this year it's gonna be completely online for our students, so they're gonna need to be able to do it in sentence form,
Okay.
so. But I still teach it the traditional way, borrow and carry. And that's just another way to do it as well, when they have to regroup. That they know that they're adding 40 and 20, and they're adding 5 and 8, so they know that they have another 10 that they have to add over to the other side. So I know they were just doing this in 3rd grade, with 3rd grade, 3 digits plus 3 digit. And then I was in Ms. Potts' classroom, and she was teaching them to be able to take that 1, that leftover 10, and add it to the tens place, and then if she had like a hundreds in the hundreds place, adding it back to the hundreds place, to the next hundreds place. So this, I know they were just doing this, adding it this way in 3rd grade. Yeah. Confusing, isn't it?
I had a question. In case like the kids, they can resolve the problem, and if they had it online, you know, the answer, they can do like the older style?
Yes. It's just the only time that they may have to explain is when they do that written part.
Okay.
And they don't have to start doing that till 3rd grade, so, 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Yeah, but I was just curious about, because you say that at Maya and the spring they be on the computer, but if they can draw like a little paper and do it like in the old method.
Yeah, as long as they can explain how they got their answer, they can get credit for it.
Alright.
Yeah. Alright, so now we talked about the different ways that they're, doing addition, we're gonna talk about some subtraction strategies. So, typical way that we've always done it in the past, drawing a picture, especially when you have word problems, because subtraction problems are basically start out the same way as addition problems, they're just the reverse of one another. The only thing with subtraction is we're crossing off what we're using, or we're crossing off how many are taken away. And a lot of what they like them to do is to separate it out. Go ahead, if they have 6 apples and they know they're subtracting 4 apples, have them draw, we let them draw off 6 and cross off, separate out how many they know that they're taking away. And then the number on the right side, this is how many they know they're taking away. And the number on the right side would be how many they have left. That would be their answer. So we're trying to teach them to think that way as well.
Ahora que está aquí un poquito, es hacer los 6, no, por
Yeah, I
ejemplo,
was
hacer
talking
las 6
about that
manzanas,
because my
ella la
son, he
tiene
started doing it.
las 6
I was
completas.
like, well, why did you do this?
Como
Like,
es
color it?
Yeah, why didn't you cross that out, or why didn't you color what you took away? Put an X on it, you know.
Entonces, le marca.
They were
Entonces,
measuring it
que
off like
sobra,
that.
pues entonces
That's the
hace la
new Common
respuesta.
Core way.
igualmente con los círculos,
And
para
we're
hacer los
all,
6
even
círculos,
for us
le
as
hace una línea
educators,
entre
we're
4 y 2,
having to train our
entonces le hace una
brains to
línea,
think this
entonces
way,
lo
so
que
that we can
sobre,
teach it this way.
siempre ella va haciendo la
Because we've
ruta
only
más
been doing
rápido.
Common Core three years. Well, Jen, I have, how long has it been since I had?
Le hace los 6 círculos, le hace una línea y divide
4 years.
lo que
I know, what has it been since?
que es 6 menos 4.
Third, fourth,
Entonces,
fifth,
lo que sobra,
Yeah.
entonces va a ser
So,
como
4
cada
years.
puesto. En lo que coge más rápido la división.
Because I taught Jackson. And we do the same thing, draw in circles, you know, 5 minus 3 is 2. We kind of teach them to stand that T stands for total, this is our total amount, and the 3 and the 2 are partners, that's what makes the total. You might see them come home and do that. And another thing you might see them come home and do is they'll have a box, and they'll have a total at the top, and they'll have 2 rectangles underneath that, and they'll have one number on one side, and they'll wanna know what number is missing on the other side. This is the same concept of total and partner, and that the total goes on top. Counting on, which is probably how we all have learned to teach math. If you have 8, take away 6, you just count from 6 up to 8, and how many you have left is your, or how many fingers you have up is your answer. And this is when subtraction gets tricky. This is and this is what they're doing in 3rd grade right now.
Mayormente
Yeah.
kindergarten más fácil.
Of course, they're doing it with hundreds too. I know, I was working with somebody yesterday in one of the kids in 3rd grade in my office, and I kept saying, no, you've got to go next door, you got to borrow, and he was, his brain was not thinking this, that if you're 64 minus 28, you have to break it down in 60 and 20, 4 and 8. You have to teach them that 6, you can't say 4 minus 8, so this is really gonna be, cross it out, make this 14. They're breaking it down into place value, expanded form, which they start talking about in 1st grade. So 64 is really 60 plus 4, and 28 is really 20 plus 8. So when they're subtracting, they can't say 4 minus 8, so they make this 50, and they make this 14. And then 14 minus 8 is 6, and 50 minus 20 is 30, and 30 plus 6 is 36. So that's just teaching them.
I don't understand how this could be making it easier for me.
Something, I will tell you, it makes it easier when they get to multiplication, because they know how to multiply tens really well. I know how this is confusing, I know. But when they start doing 2-digit by 2-digit, if they know that 10 times 10 or 10 times 20 is gonna be 200, okay? And then they know that 5 times 4 is gonna be 20, so 200 plus 20 is gonna make it 220. So if they can think of it that way, it makes multiplication a little bit easier, because it's so much easier to multiply tens and hundreds by each other than it is to do the old, let me multiply by ones, let me multiply by tens, let me move over here, and let me do it. It becomes a little bit easier when you get to multiplication. But for addition and subtraction, it's confusing.
Yeah, because like now, as you showing the steps, like 1, 2, and 3.
When you show the steps out,
Yeah.
right. And they were doing that in 3rd grade, and it was confusing for a lot of them, when I was in the classroom with them, but I could see some of them really start to understand once they started to break it apart.
Yeah, I went online and I was showing my son like to borrow, sometimes when they do the distraction, to borrow, I thought, his friend, you need to borrow with his friend, that way he can understand. Because
Right. I always taught my kids to go next door and borrow a cup of sugar and knocking on the door, hey, can I borrow 10? And that's just, of course, the same way that we've always taught it, and the way that we all understand it, is by going, crossing out my 5, making my 4 14, and then doing traditional subtraction, which is the way I still like to do it.
The easiest method.
It is, and it's really, this way is really just learning the steps. And that's what I told the children I was working with yesterday, because once they start borrowing, they just wanna keep going. Once they borrow from the tens, they just wanna keep going to the hundreds, and I said, no, you gotta, do your ones first, and then subtract your ones, and then go to your tens, and don't worry until you borrow it. Borrow first, subtract your ones, then go to your tens to see if you need to borrow from your hundreds. Don't just keep going all the way across, because that's what they want to do. And then these are the multiplication strategies, and this is when they get to third grade, and they'll even start doing some of this in second grade. At the end of second grade, they'll start doing, making charts. They'll start saying, if I'm doing my 5 timetables, they'll write their fives out to 50. And then they'll know that that's 1 5, 2 5, 3 5, 4 5, 5 5, 6 5, 7 5, 8 5, 9 5, 10 5. And then we teach them to do, the answer is really just a repeated addition. 1 5 is 5, 2 5s is 10, 3 5s is 15. So they start doing that really at the end of second grade, making a chart. And that repeated addition, that first number tells you how many you have of the second number.
Usted que ellos ya van a empezar a enseñar que una rayita es el 10.
And draw and erase, they do this too, and they start doing this really at the end of second grade too, where they know if they have 3 times 5, and they really do a lot more of this in third grade, but they know if they have 3 times 5, they really have 3 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 3. Either way, they can think of it as the reverse of one another. So they can make models, they can draw pictures, draw the array. They can use squares, like they're finding area, because this is really big in third grade, is starting to find area. And then, or they can do repeated addition. They can add 5 3s, or they can add 3 5s. But the area models really come into place in third grade, because that's really one of the bigger geometry measurement skills that they'll learn, is how to find area. First thing I've ever taught that year. And then the same, that's just another way, just another picture of the third grade strategies, doing groups. And this becomes really important, that they can do groups when they are able to do division. Okay, so they doing groups, because this shows them how to divide. So if they have 4 groups of 6, then they'll know that that's really 4 times 6 is 24, and 24 divided by 4 is 6, because they know they have 4 groups of this number. And so if they can draw groups of things, that really helps them when they start learning their division facts. The arrays really are more typically for multiplication, and the area is for more multiplication. But if they can learn to do groups, the repeated groups, that will really help them when they get to division.
A los niños chiquitos es más fácil con dibujitos y eso, ¿verdad? Que se les pone uno el número.
Sí, pero le llama más la atención a ellos, que con los números.
And then this is more of that, just breaking that number apart and using expanded form. If I have 4 and I'm multiplying it times 237, I'm really multiplying 4 times 200. I'm multiplying 4 times 30, and I'm multiplying 4 times 7. So once I get all of these answers, I get my 800, my 120, and my 28. I can add all 3 of those numbers up and get my answer. So if they can learn to break it down into its parts when they start doing multiplication, because it's a lot easier to multiply 4 times 200 than it is to say, 4 times 7, carry my 1, 4 times 3, carry my 2. So it becomes a little bit easier when they do it that way, especially too when they get to the 43 times 67, then they know they're multiplying 40 and 60. So if they know that 4 times 6 is 24, I just have to write down 2 zeros. So I get 2,400, and I know 40 times 7 is 280, because 4 times 7 is 28 and 1 0. And then they do the 3 times 60 is 180, and 3 times 7 is 21, so then they just add their numbers, and they can come up with 2,881. So really when they get to multiplication, if they can really learn to break it down into its parts, it becomes a little bit easier to multiply. Just a little bit easier. Because most of the time when we start doing 2-digit times 2-digit, they don't know their facts well enough to, they don't know their facts well enough. That's why really knowing their facts, their addition facts or subtraction and multiplication facts is so important. Because if they know their facts, then it's a lot easier to do it the traditional way. To the same, what we just did, just what I just called an expanded form, and it just shows a little bit, breaks it down in a little bit different way. But really, you're multiplying 40 and 60, and 40 and 7, and 3 and 60, and 3 and 7, and just adding it all up. I like to show it a little, a little bit differently than they're showing it. I like to do it, I like to do it this way when I teach it, this way down here. Because I think this way is a little confusing. So I like to do it this way down here. That they can see that you're multiplying your 10s, your 40 and your 60 first, and then your 40 and your 7, and then your so I like to show it that way, that bottom way, in the corner over here. And over here. I don't know, I think I just like to do it vertically. It's easier for me to think of than horizontal. That's another way to do it, is this, the old traditional shortcut method, that's the way we all learn to do it. Multiply your ones first, carry, multiply your 10s, then multiply your hundreds. And the same here, you multiply your ones, and then you multiply your 1 by your 10, and then you come down and multiply your 10 by your 1, and then you multiply your 10s by your 10s, and then add it all up. So that's just the traditional way that we've all been taught how to multiply in the past. So, and like I said, for the test in the spring, or when they do their benchmarks, or any of those things, if they can do it a traditional way, that's fine. The only time it becomes a little bit tricky is that they need to have a little bit of knowledge of these new ways, so that if they have to explain something, or if it asks them to show it, to do something in expanded form or expanded notation, and that would be what we were talking about, breaking it down into its parts. So, and like I said, last year was the first time we gave the test, the new test, so, and I'm sure they're gonna make changes on it, like they did with the CRCT, they're probably gonna refine it as they go along, so. But the writing part won't go away, but having to explain your answer won't go away for probably a long time. And then this is division. And division is basically the opposite, well it is, division is the opposite of multiplication. So if we know our multiplication facts, then we should know we can figure out our division facts. So if I have 3,822 divided by 7, then I can break that down into its parts. 500 plus 40 plus 6, and then is my answer. So I'm going to multiply 7 into this number first, into 3,000, get 500, I get my answer, write it down. 7 times 5 is 3,500, and 7 into, break it down into this number, and just add my numbers up as I go. I know, it's so confusing. And this is when they start doing this more in 4th grade, 4th and 5th grade. So this is really when they start to do, really 5th grade is when they start to do division this way.
Once you get it, it's not difficult.
Once
It's
they
just
get it.
long.
It takes longer to do it that way. It takes longer to do it that way than it takes the traditional way that we've always learned to do it. And I think it's just, to be honest, I think they just want children to know how to break numbers into place values. That's what I think, in the long run. But this is just, the 7 traditional way. 7 goes into 38 5 times, so I go ahead and write 500. And then I divide 7 into, was it 322? So 7 will go into 32, because you only divide it for the first 2. 7 will go into 32 4 times, so that's 40. So that's 500, this is 40, so go ahead and break it out. And then 7 will go into 42 6 times, so 500 plus 40 plus 6 is 546. To me, looking at it, if I'm gonna do division this way, I'm gonna do it this way. That's gonna be the easier way for me, for my brain to think, is to do it this way than the other slide. Because the other slide to me was a lot more confusing. So, this, to me, this way is a lot easier to divide 7 into 38. Oh, that goes 5 times, I'm gonna write 500. 7 goes into 32 4 times, I'm gonna write 40. 7 goes into 42 6 times, I'm gonna add up 540 and 6. To me, that's easier for me to think of it that way than to see it written out horizontal. I think I'm just more of a vertical math person than a horizontal math person.
Me too.
Well, we teach kids to rewrite the problem all the time.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we teach them if they see a math problem horizontal to rewrite it vertical, because it's just easier to solve that way. So,
Traditional way. Vamos a hacer así, de manera
Yeah, as long as they
tradicional,
do it right, but-
la que pasamos en la
right,
original.
and this is traditional, the way we all multiply or divide. We say 7, and we write it out, and then 35, subtract 8 minus 5, bring down our 2, so it goes in 4 times, write 28, subtract 32 minus 28, bring down our 2, 7 into 42 6, the traditional way, the way we've all been taught. So, and they still teach it the traditional way. We just throw in the Common Core way, just to be sure that if they come to a problem on a test, that even if it's a problem that they just see and they have to be able to recognize it, it's important for them to know how to do it, to have some knowledge of how to solve that type of problem. Not necessarily they're gonna have to solve it that way to get an answer, but to have knowledge of being able to recognize it. And then just fact fluency, your kids at home, just practice their math facts. Get them to practice their addition, their subtraction. These are some websites, extramath.com will have fluency practice. Of course, iExcel Math, they all have an iExcel Math account that they can go into and use at home, so that's a great thing to practice on at home. abcia.com is fun, it's a fun game website, and it goes all the way from kindergarten all the way up, and that it's free. All of these are free. Multiplication.com is another great one, and they even have, you can Google, addition, subtraction, whatever, and there's gonna come up plenty of different ones. In fact, a new website that I found yesterday, or 2 days ago when I was working with 3rd graders that you might wanna write down, is funwithsubtraction.com, and you can make worksheets that you can print, free worksheets that you can print off. Funwithsubtraction.com. And I just found that one yesterday when I was working with some students, and what I liked about it is it was the math problems were laid out on like graph paper, so each number was in a square. So if they had to borrow, it was very clear what they were doing, and they could cross it out, they could write it above, it wasn't all squished up, it was spaced out well. So that was a great website that I used with my 3rd graders the other day that I was working with. And then just flashcards, Dollar Tree flashcards that have numbers that they can, add, subtract, multiply, divide. You can use dominoes, put 2 dominoes together, have them multiply those 2 numbers, or add those 2 numbers, or subtract those numbers. So just little things that you can pick up like that to practice with. And that is to the end. If you have any questions? And I have door prizes for everyone. Everyone can